Welcome to the Fuzzy Mike, the interview series, the podcast, whatever Kevin wants to call it. It's Fuzzy Mike.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Fuzzy Mike. This episode was recorded on February 1st, 2024. My guest is my friend and ring announcing mentor, the golden-voiced Joe Martinez. You've seen Joe announce for over a decade now on the UFC, and he's done boxing cards for Golden Boy Promotions, several other big promotion companies and boxing organizations, and he's done pay-per-view bouts as well. Now, that's how Joe makes his living. But Joe defines his life by his ministry and spiritual connection with God. And that's where our conversation turned after we first learned about Joe's new hobby.
A bunch of guys from my old church, and we're all Jeepers and campers, and we have pictures of our Jeeps on our Zoom.
Do you go like off-roading and stuff with your Jeep?
Mm-hmm.
We have a buddy of ours that lives in Houston, Texas. His name is Isaac, and he does the same thing. And man, he gets that thing like vertical.
Oh man, yeah, that's hardcore. We're pretty we're more like crawlers. We don't get too crazy with it.
But you could if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, it's a Jeep.
Yeah.
I mean, upside down is welcomed.
How long have you had that? How long have you been doing this?
I've been Jeeping for about almost 6 years.
So is it good Jeeping out in Vegas?
Yeah. I'm actually going out tomorrow.
Cool. How many cards you got coming up?
4. I'm off this weekend, and then I got 4 straight weeks, and then I'll be off for a week, and then 4 weeks again.
Are you primarily doing MMA now, or is boxing still a big part of your job?
No, I'm still doing a lot of boxing.
Yeah.
It's about maybe half and half.
Okay. Are you working with one single promoter or a bunch of different promoters?
I work with a couple, primarily Golden Boy. They're my priority when it comes to boxing, and then of course UFC when it comes to MMA.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to talk about UFC, but I do want to talk about Golden Boy and about boxing, because it seems to me like boxing's having a resurgence right now.
Seems to be, yes.
They're actually
it's nice to see.
It is nice to see. They're actually putting meaningful fights together now. You know, I don't know if it's like the fighters are fighting for the same promotion and they want to get together like that, but yeah, we're seeing some quality matches. Yeah,
and we need to keep seeing that. It was getting very proprietary for a while. It felt, like if you weren't a top ranked guy, it was very difficult to get a PBC fight or a Golden Boy fight. Make those things happen. Just so much money involved. And I mean, of course you do have the mandatory challenger stuff with WBC, the belts. So that comes into play. And I don't know a whole lot about ranking systems, but they can make fights happen. And there's been instances where fighters have just said, you know what, I'm going to vacate this belt because I don't want to pay the purse to fight. I don't want to pay the fee to fight for a sanctioned title.
Right.
So they might vacate it. And, I don't know what those fees are. I believe it's a percentage of the nut, but
do you have a preference?
What we're seeing.
Do you have a preference in boxing or MMA?
I appreciate both of them.
Yeah. But as far as announcing goes,
that gets in there.
As far as announcing,
I mean, it's a good question. I enjoy the boxing aspect because I feel a little more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little slower pace. I feel like sometimes in MMA, it's more of a boom, get it in, get it out type of a deal. I talked about this the other week, how uncomfortable I got just a couple years ago in the octagon at UFC, just because I was feeling, pandemic, we were just alone, and when there was nobody present and the arena was empty and it's just you and your thoughts and you're like, gosh, man, who am I even talking to right now? People are watching, but the enemy, I'm big into God, and I believe the enemy speaks lies into our life. And I was very, very in tune with the enemy lying to me and telling me, you don't belong in here. This isn't your platform. You're an imposter. And I dealt with this for, probably 6 months, and finally I've started seeking some therapeutic help, um, and overcame it. But it was just such a trip. But in boxing, it was like I got out of the octagon one day, and I talked to the one of my producer guys. I said, "Man, did you hear any difference in what I was doing?" And he says, "No, he sounded fine." But I literally, I couldn't breathe. I was like in the blue corner wearing, and I was so panicked. I was like, "God, just get me out of here! I want to get out of here. I wanted to go home. I didn't even want to come back." And it was the next two times after that I did UFC that I dealt with that same anxiety. Um, and of course, like I said, I got help. And I was like, I'm talking to my wife. I'm like, how is this happening when I've done thousands of shows? I've been with UFC for 10 years at this point, and now this is happening to me. Um, but I just increased my prayer time, spending more time with God before shows, and just glorifying Him for the position that I'm in, and reminding myself that I'm not here because of me. I'm here because God put me here, and give Him the glory, and not worry about what anybody else is saying or thinking or doing. Just go in and do my job. As ring announcers, I believe there's so much self gratification and self glorifying that we tend to lose sight on what actually matters, and those are the fighters. The people we get to introduce, the promotions we represent. Fans enjoy it, and we're not there for ourselves. I'm not there to take pictures with people and sign autographs and tweet about what I'm doing or where I'm at. I got away from all that stuff years and years ago, and primarily because of that, it's like I found myself looking more at me and who I was rather than what I was doing. And I said that this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not a superstar, and I don't need to act like one. I don't have an opinion on a lot of things that worldly matter. And if you want to hear what I have to say, then you're my friend already. Kevin, you and I talk, you know, and that's who I keep close to me. I keep my friends close to me. I don't keep the extra people that I don't know in my life close to me. We might have a conversation, and all I have is LinkedIn, and that's a professional atmosphere for me that, people primarily just want things from you. In the other realm, it's just, I feel like there's just too much easy access to people, um, and it can distort, the true purpose of what we're doing.
Well, it distorts reality, and there's a lot to unravel in what you just said, Joe. And I want to go back to one of the things you said at the beginning, where you had self-doubt. You were starting to question your imposter theory. I go through that every single day of my life. So I know that you're very spiritual. You have your own ministry, and you do a lot of work with the church. But is that where you just did you said you sought therapy and stuff? But how did you overcome that?
Uh, Self-affirmation, speaking life into the thoughts that were coming into my life. All the negative thoughts I was rebuking as soon as they showed up. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and that's John 10:10 of the Bible. Not to give you a sermon or anything, but if you're allowing negative thoughts into your mind, then you're allowing it to control you. And when you start to replace those with healthy thoughts and good thoughts and thoughts of who you are and who God says you are, for me, that changed everything. And now when I get in there, I just, before I even walk up, I'm like, God, I just thank you for the opportunity that you put before me today. I pray that I glorify you in all things. And may I go in and just represent you. And I remind myself that this isn't about me or for me. This is a platform that I'm on. And sometimes I get to share, my beliefs, and and just try to stay in that narrow path, because the wide way is the road to destruction. And I've been down that. I've been down it several times. I had a nearly failed marriage because I was on that wide road of destruction, seeking the world and all that it has to offer, because that's an immediate gratification. The
Okay.
world can quickly give you everything you want and take it right back from you. And it's like we have microwave generation and slow cooker, and microwave, we want it now. Slow cooker, it's going to take some time. And that's how it is with God. God's going to say, you're going to pray for what you want. And he's not necessarily going to give you everything that you want, but he's going to give you the desires of your heart. And as long as your heart matches up with his. And that's like we're onions, and just he's peeling layers and layers of us away So those significant things to us, maybe in this moment, become so much less important in our lives. I remember the first Christian concert I went to. I was newly saved. This is probably a year later, and I'm walking around and I'm like, "Where's the beer garden?" And I'm thinking like, I need a beer, because that was my thoughts. Were like, the only way I can have fun is to be inebriated, and not just trashed, but just to get a
Take
little
the
bit
edge
of a
off.
head change. Yeah, and then I was like, oh, I realized that there was no beer, and that it was just that wasn't the place.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, how am I going to enjoy myself? But that was part of my sanctification process. It's like God just started removing that from me. I was delivered from alcohol in a bar in Ireland, August 17th of 2014.
Of
I mean,
all
in a
places.
bar of all places in Ireland. And it was just revealed to me the destruction that was ahead had I continued down that path. And
Can I
like I
ask
said, if
how
I
that was
didn't,
revealed?
it was through it was through what I saw, a demon.
Okay.
And I did a bar stroll, and I walked around. My buddies are over here in the back, sitting on a chair and just chatting and having a good time. And I was like, I'm gonna go for a little walk, and I come back, and there, probably 20 feet from me, was a woman, and we made eye contact. And before my eyes, her face transformed into a demon, like what I described as just something from hell. And as quickly as I saw it, it was gone. She was there again. And I didn't walk that way. I turned and I walked over to my buddies and I said, "Hey guys, let's get out of here."
Yeah.
And they said, "No, have a beer, just relax." I said, "No, I'm good." And that was the moment that I turned and I got in the cab and I went back to the hotel, and I got on my knees, and I praised God. And I had emailed my wife and I said, "Oh my God, you'll never believe what happened to me tonight." And she wrote back. She says, "I already know." And I was like, "How do you know?" She said, "Like, I've been praying for you to be delivered from alcohol." And I was like, "Why were you praying for me?" I'm like, "I didn't have the problem. I didn't have an alcohol problem.
Uh-huh.
I had a decision problem sometimes." Um, but it was something I enjoyed. Like, I enjoyed just hanging out with the guys after a fight. You have a couple of drinks, laugh, and then you see you next show. And that was the way it kept going and going. But as soon as I was delivered, like the next week, we're at a show, and I get done with the show. I go back to the hotel. I'm sitting at the bar area to eat some wings, and a guy brings me over a drink, and I said, "No, I'm good." He says, "Whatever, man. Here, take your drink." I said, "No, I quit drinking. I'm good." And it was August 17th of 2014. And I like to say I never looked back, but I did have a breaking moment a couple years ago, and I was just going through a lot of stuff, and I had put God way down my list, uh, and and dealt with it, and He dealt with me. But we're
Well,
good now. We're back on good terms, I think.
let me ask you this then, because this is something that I struggle with on my own when we're talking about spirituality. What is the purpose of tragedy in a spiritual life?
Sometimes it's just growth. I mean, we'll never truly understand why we lose the things that we hold on to. And people like to blame God for destruction and disasters that happen, but we have to remember that He gave us this world in its originality. It was perfect. It was a perfect place with Adam and Eve, and when sin entered, that's when it was handed over to the enemy. So this isn't the promised land. We're passing through until we get to heaven, and the kingdom is where we have all of the beauty, and there's no more sickness and sadness and disasters and destructions. This is the eternal glory, in the kingdom of God. But right now we're living in a lost world.
My grandmother, we were raised, born and raised Catholic. My grandmother said that hell is on earth. And then I had a pastor once describe. I fear death, bro. I do. Okay, and I don't know why, but I do. And this pastor told me, he said, "Don't think of death as an end. Think of death as a beginning." Okay, when you're
Yes.
born, you come out of a canal. Well, when you die, you come out of a canal and you go into this glorious realm. What's there to be afraid of on that? Is that kind of what you feel too?
I do. I do. I like that. That's a good perspective to hold on to. I appreciate that. He even said that to you because a lot of them won't even touch it. There's a lot of turn or burn stuff. Like you don't get right with God, you're going to go straight to hell and you're going to burn in eternal fire. I mean, God is full of grace, and we all fall short of Him,
Well, if he's
short of glory.
perfection, then yeah, we're always going to fall short.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
if
I
he's the
think a lot of
ideal,
people, and that's the misconception about God. People are like, well, I don't go to church because I'm just not good enough, or I'm still bad. And like I said, man, I was not a good person. I was a morally good person, but I wasn't a good boyfriend, or I wasn't a good husband. I wasn't a faithful man for a very long time in my life because I just didn't know how. And I didn't have a fear of losing anything until, my father passed. When my dad died, I was like, man, like it was so surreal to me. This is in 96. And then I dealt with my biological father passing during COVID, and my cousin passing of COVID, one of my cousins committing suicide. It's like I had a year of just what is up? And I think we all did. I mean,
we all
COVID
do.
brought out so many demons that I think people we're still dealing with. Kids in school and the social aspect of everything. But that's when when you start to live in fear is when you're giving the enemy territory. And the only way to remove that fear is to take that fear from him, to give glory to God and to praise him, because he's got a plan for your life too. Just as the enemy has a plan to destroy you, God's got one to prosper you. And it may be earthly prosper, it may be earthly things, but the true promise is the eternity. It's like we worry too much about the present and we forget about his presence because he's in everything, but he's got to be invited. We got to let him in.
So we got on this because we were talking about your imposter syndrome. I deal with the same thing. You say that we got to let go of the demon, the bad thought. At what point do we lose our humility then if we're not cognizant of our own faults?
I don't think we lose humility. We need to keep that,
Okay.
right?
Why?
Don't you
Yeah.
believe that? So to understand.
But like if you say I belong here, okay, that's a
Mhm,
confident statement. Okay. At
mhm.
what point does that confidence overwhelm your humility that God, I'm thankful for being here?
Well, he puts us where we're supposed to be. We're
Okay.
always where we're supposed to be unless we're not walking with him. Um, my beliefs on that are, yeah, I've taken opportunities that I don't feel were fully blessed by God, but I know he makes all things work together for the good of those who love him according to his will. He's got a will for our lives, just as we have free will. He has a will for our lives as well. And just because we go down the wrong road doesn't mean he's not going to fix it for us, because sometimes he will. Uh, but sometimes he'll also let us fall into, that trap, because the devil's got traps all over the place. There's snares in
Oh my
all
gosh.
kinds of different directions of our life. Uh, and we make impulsive decisions as human beings. We see something, we want it, we get it, and we reap the consequences.
Yeah.
But when we're patient and we feel the timing is right, or maybe it's blessed, or maybe it's a word from God, or and not everybody even believes in that. Not everybody believes God is the center of the creation, that He created all things. But I do, and I've seen it. I've seen my faith at work. I've seen lives restored. I've seen marriages restored, and I've seen failures, and I've seen failures from those who walked away from God. He's merciful, and he knows exactly what we're going to do. He knows everything we need, but he can't really do anything if we're not in relation with him.
I want to go back to something you said just a little while ago. God puts you where you want to be. It goes back to the very first show that I ever did ring announcing was on HBO, buddy. I did the undercard and Buffer did the televised stuff. And my buddy who actually got me the job said, "Are you nervous?" Right before the first fight. "Are you nervous?" And I'm like, you would think I would be, but I'm not because I asked to be here. And if you ask to be somewhere, you're not allowed to be nervous.
That's good.
Agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that yeah, I mean that's being thrown into the fire right away, man.
Yeah. Well,
That's
my first gig was
big
HBO
platform.
World Championship Boxing. The main event that night was Nonito Donaire and Jorge Arce. And then a month later, I get Strike Force on Showtime, and I did the undercard for that as well. And earlier we talked about MMA and boxing. MMA, I think, is harder to announce because there's so many different ways a fight can end. With boxing,
Mhm.
it's just split decision, majority decision, knockout, technical knockout. You don't have to know that Darce choke and all that kind of stuff. You know, yeah. So, but when you're sitting ringside, because you and I have sat cage side before for Invicta, what's going through your mind? Are you praying for the people inside the cage?
No, no, I'm not thumping. I love the Lord. I take him everywhere I go with me. If people want to hear my testimony, I gladly share. I just try to walk a straight line, man. Kevin, I don't look at people and say, hey man, you shouldn't be doing this or doing that.
Yeah.
People walk their own walk.
Well, it's interesting because I remember when we were in Kansas City together, Eves Edwards and you and I went to dinner before the Invicta fights. And
Mhm.
Eves does not share the same beliefs that you and I share, but we all sat there and got along.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, I yeah,
Opportunities.
opportunities for sure. Do you still talk with Eves?
On occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we work together most of the time, that's about it. But you got your work buddies and you have your life buddies.
Hmm.
You know, I've been more conscious about this year. I'm practicing more of when somebody pops into my head to send them a message or give them a phone call.
Uh-huh.
I think it's just another opportunity, and I think God put that on my heart a lot because of what happened at UNLV and just the random acts of violence that are happening all over the world, but even more located here in Vegas. I'm like, if somebody had just spoken to this man, maybe he just needed somebody to care about his day, and it would have changed things. Maybe he wouldn't have gone and did what he did. And I mean, it's so easy to love. It's so easy to just be kind. It takes energy to be angry. It takes energy to walk around pissed off all day long.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's so easy just to put a smile on your face and hi.
There's so many jaded people out there, though, that if you walk up to somebody with a smile, they're going to think something's wrong with you.
But it's got to start with somebody.
Well, yeah, it does. And when we were talking about Eve earlier, I was going to ask you, which led in what we're talking about right now. How do we change the world? Because the world's a messed up place right now.
Well, I mean, I don't feel like that's our assignment to change the world.
Okay.
I think we show the world love, and should we just keep praying for our leaders? The government, the leaders of the world. That's we're even told, in the Bible to pray for them, and we actually are supposed to even listen to them. Sometimes I'm like, I'll start next year, because those are my thoughts. I can't listen to what's going on right now. This is absolutely nuts. It's absurd.
Okay. When you say let's
But
pray for them, what's a typical prayer?
typical prayer, Lord, just intervene where you need to intervene. Soften hearts that need to be softened. And I'm always reminded of Moses in Egypt when Pharaoh had the Israelites and they were captive, they were slaves, and Moses was given the assignment by God to go and tell Pharaoh to free my people, and then he sent 10 plagues to him, and but God hardened Pharaoh's heart. And I'm like, why did he harden his heart? Because he had a mission, and it was to free the slaves. It was to get them out of there so they could make it to the promised land, the land that God had promised them, the land of milk and honey. But they had to become free first. So God continued to harden Pharaoh's heart. I'm like, geez, are these hearts hardened still? Are these hearts of our leaders of the world, are they hardened to the point that all power, all they want is power. All they want is oppress people. So I pray for hearts to be softened, and that God will just intervene and get right in the middle of everything. Because at the end of the day, He is still in control. He can do anything. He can do all things. But will He while we're on earth? I don't think so. I don't
Yeah.
think we're ever going to see a world peace. Not until we're getting into some deep stuff, because that's Revelation.
Yeah.
There's another conversation there. That's like, the Antichrist and the 3.5 years. It's real deep, and I don't want to turn anybody off if they're not already turned off that's listening. But
No, this is a
I
great
just
conversation. This is a philosophical conversation, a spiritual conversation. And you know what? There's people out there that might need to hear this more than we think,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I just finished, well, I got one more week, but I led a Revelation study, and we've got 2 chapters left. And one of my buddies, he, raised Catholic. We were all raised Catholic. I'm a born again Christian myself. And he's still a bit in the Catholic faith. And he says, man, 38 years and I've never once read the Bible. I've been a Catholic my entire life. And I said, I never read the Bible until 2012. That's when I was saved, and my buddy Dave, until 3 years ago, he never read the Bible. And I think it is a choice. I mean, we have this book, but the choice is this. The choice is, you're going to pick up and learn about God's word for yourself, or you're going to let somebody speak it to you. The problem with speaking it to you is you don't know
Right.
if it's true or if it's not. My father-in-law told his buddy this story. He says, "Oh man, I read the story in the Bible. It was this great, elaborate story." And his buddy goes, "Man, that's crazy. That's awesome. I can't believe God." And he says, "No, I made that up." He said, "That's why I'm encouraging you to read your Bible, because you can be led astray just as easily
Well,
by
if
not reading
you want to read a
and
gory
listening to
book,
somebody
that's
else."
the Bible.
Yeah,
Wow.
it can be a bit of a wow, a jaw opener.
Joe Martinez is my guest. Joe is one of the premier ring announcers and cage announcers in the world. And you and I had an opportunity to go to dinner before you did an Invicta show. Tell us that story that you told me about the guy that you helped. Do you remember that story? I believe he might have been a homeless person, and you helped show him. Joe doesn't just talk the talk. Joe walks the walk. And I love this story if you can remember it.
Of course. Yeah, I actually blogged about that story. And the reason being was because when he was going through all the things he was going through, he got into a moment of being ready. He thought of himself as, I'm ready to go out and help people, to get them off the streets. Um, and I said, no, I need you to stop what you're doing. I need you to write down your testimony, write down everything that you went through to get to where you are today, and remember those things, constantly, because that's your testimony to share. But walking out on the streets today after 4 months of sobriety is not the time. This isn't the timing yet. I know your heart, and so does God, but there is a time, and this isn't it yet. But the day, it was, I think it was 2016 February, and we were doing our ministry walk in Anaheim behind Angel Stadium, and there was 400 tents, homeless people everywhere, drugs everywhere, and God put on my wife's heart 70 lunches, 70 socks and all this. So we got 70 out, and we walked around thinking, okay, we'll talk to 70 people and maybe we'll lead them to the Lord. And we spent, oh my Lord, we spent 30 minutes here, 45 minutes here, and we're talking to 5 people, 6 people. And we still had like 30 lunches left by the time it was 3 or 4 hours later. And a lot of people had to go home. Well, my daughter and I, we had still plenty of time. And I said, well, you want to go home, or you want to go over here and under this bridge? And she says, let's just keep going. Let's give them all out. So I was like, okay. We walk under the bridge. It's the 5 freeway. And it was like walking into like death. It smelled, it was feces, urine, just awful, awful smells. And then you see people. It was like a zombie apocalypse. Just people walking around, no facial expressions, just catatonic. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? And so we started talking to some people and handing out some lunches. And we were basically a resource provider. Our ministry was a gap ministry. God always provides. That's our acronym. And our ministry was called Anchor of Hope, and it was helping out people everywhere. And we would help people get from from here to there, and we filled that gap. So if they were stuck with no ID, and they couldn't get into this facility because they didn't have an ID, we pick them up, take them to Social Security, get them an ID, take them to DMV, get them an ID, Social Security card, all these things that they needed to get to the next step, eye exams, doctor's appointments, all these different things, right? And it wasn't we're shoving Bible, we were just showing love, building relationships. And at the end, there's this guy, and he's sitting on this couch, and he's just a mess. And his feet were so swollen. I'd never seen anything like it. They were so swollen he couldn't even put socks on.
Wow.
And I looked over and I said, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" And he goes, "I'm not well. An ambulance is going to come and get me." He had already called. And I said, "Well, I could take you now. I got my truck up the street." And he goes, "No, no, they'll find me. They'll come and get me." And I said, "Okay, well, tell me your name." He says, "Oh, my name's Rick." I said, "Okay, Rick, well, I'm going to write your name down here, and you tell me what hospital you're going to, and I'm going to check in on you later on." He goes, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to go to UC Irvine Medical Center." I said, "Okay." So I go home that night and come back. I was working at a place called Unidos, which is a men's recovery home for addicts. So it was like a 90-day rehab. You go in detox and rehab. Well, I called Irvine Hospital. No Rick was there. And I said, "Oh, crud. This guy died. He's probably still under the bridge." And I felt awful. And time goes by. It's like 3 weeks pass. And I gave him my number too. And 3 weeks later, I'm doing rounds at Unidos. It's like a Saturday night. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. And there's a guy sitting in the detox lounge area watching the TV. I said, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And looked familiar. And I thought maybe I'd seen him around the facility. He goes, "Oh, I'm hanging in there, man. I'm pretty good." So, "Okay, well, what's your name?" He says, "Oh, my name's Rick." I said, "All right, Rick. Well, if you need anything, I'll be here in the office." And I go back in and I look at the detox intakes, and it said Hendrik Vollerts. And I was like, "Rick Vollerts." I was like, "Rick." And I jump up and I'm like, "Rick." I run out there and he looks at me. He goes, "Oh, my savior." And
Oh,
I
wow.
said, "No." I said, "I'm not." I said, "I'm not him, but I know him. I know who he is." And I said, "What happened?" He goes, "Man, after you left, the ambulance took 4 hours to come. They couldn't find me. And then when they finally did, they took me to Irvine Medical, but Irvine Medical was full. So they took me to St. Joseph's. I had
Mm.
congestive heart disease. My heart was at 20% functioning. So they got me just in time. And they put me on some medical, some pills. And I was in there for 3 weeks to get this medication and get okay. And then when I got out, I lost your number, I lost your name, but I remembered the place you told me I could go to. And that's why I'm here today. And I mean, this is divine appointment stuff, man. So I'm like, "Well, what's the plan?" He goes, "Well, you tell me." He says, I'm not going back out on the streets. I can't. I will die. So you tell me." And I said, "Well, I know of a place that would be great. It's called Teen Challenge, and it is a faith-based organization. It's Christian." And he goes, "Well, I'm an atheist." And I said, "I understand that. This is completely up to you. If you want a place that's safe, it'll give you a full year. Let's see how it works." He goes, "All right, I'm in." So we go through it, man. It's a very long story. And it's a beautiful one, but it's a tragic one at the same time.
Isn't it the most rewarding
Yeah,
thing to be able to help somebody?
it was. And that was, God worked on me a lot because, I was pretty freshly saved. 4 years later, I'm doing full on ministry work. And and God was working on me with that, with like, who am I doing it for? Because what happened was, after Rick got into the rehab. Oh, by the way, we go to church every Wednesday while he's in Teen Challenge, and I show up. I go every Wednesday and meet with them. And one day I walk in and he hands me a certificate of baptism, and I said, "What's this? Who's this for?" And he says, "I got baptized." I said,
Wow.
"Yeah, but you're an atheist. You don't believe in God." He says, "I can't deny him anymore. Everything that has happened, everything that I went through to get to this point today it's undeniable that he exists. It's undeniable that he's got a plan for my life." And I said, "Man, I get emotional with
Yeah.
him. I start crying, and we cry together. He's like 8 years older than me at the point. I think he was 40 something years old. And I'm like, I felt so blessed. I mean, this guy was making $250,000 a year, 3 kids, had the cars, the house, he had all the toys. He coached his kids little league and had a business partner commit suicide. And he went from just A to Z in a matter of moments. And 7 years he's out on the streets, just walked away from everything, walked away from it all. And the next time I saw him, so he goes, gets baptized. 4 months pass by, and he goes, Joe, I'm ready to go back out there. I want to help people. And I said, okay, let's wait the year. And I told you the story a little bit earlier.
Uh-huh.
And I said, just stay. Just 1 more month, stay here, and then you get transferred to the next phase. And he goes, okay, I'll stay. Well, the next morning they call me and they said, hey, Rick left the program. He's out. And I said, okay. So he's out on the streets. I knew where he was going to be. I went and I found him. I said, what are you doing? And he says, I don't want to be in there anymore. I want to help people. And I said, well, who do you want to help? And he goes, well, I want to help Faith. That's my girlfriend. She's right over there. And I said, Faith's the one that got you high and left you on the couch to die. And now she's over there. I said, well, go talk to her. He goes, well, she's got a boyfriend. And I said, Rick, what are you thinking right now, dude?
Yeah.
Like, what's going through your head? He goes, I don't know. I just couldn't be in there anymore. I said, okay, man. I said, look, I'm not upset. I'm just disappointed. It's like, it's you lead your kid the right way, and when they do something wrong, you get disappointed. But I was more hurt than anything because I was doing everything I could. He was going to be my success story. Like, God is so good. Look what he did. And 2 weeks later, I come back and Rick was just jacked up, spun out of his mind, and he was so high. And I said, man, what happened? He goes, I know. I got to go back in there. I got to go back in the Teen Challenge. Can you get me back in? And I called him. I said, I got Rick. Can I bring him back? And I said, yeah. So I said, cool. That'll take you right now. And he goes, well, come pick me up in the morning. He wanted to get loaded one more time.
Sure.
And I meet him the next morning, 9 a.m. Well, I go to meet him, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. He never showed up. And this is in about July of that year. And then in November, I never talked to him again. In November, his ex-wife, got my number, and she calls me and she says, Joe, I want to let you know that tonight we're pulling the plug on Rick.
Oh, man.
And I said, what happened? And she said, he got back into drugs really bad, and heart failure, liver failure, kidney failure. Everything is just dying in his body. And if you want to see him, tonight's the night that we're going to take him off life support. And I said, okay, well, I'll be there. And I called my buddy Sartorius. He's a pastor. He's out in the Dominican right now and leading his ministry. And I said, Sartorius, I want you to go with me tonight because Rick's passing. And Sartorius got to know Rick as well. Like, my whole family got to know Rick. Like, he was a success story for us. It was incredible. And we get to the hospital, and he's not in a coma. He's just in a deep, relaxed state. He can't talk. He can't open his eyes or anything. And I just grabbed his hand and I said, man, I love you. I'm here. And if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. And he squeezes my hand. And I said, don't go like this. And said, don't die with shame, Yeah. And we're not praying that you're going to die right now. But don't have that guilt and remorse. So just ask God back, ask for forgiveness, repent, ask him back into your heart. And he lifted his hand up to my chest, and it was like on my heart. And then in 5 minutes, he was gone.
Wow.
And he died. Yeah. And I'm crying. And Sartorius was like, that was incredible. He was celebrating. And I was like, Sartorius, you are out of your mind. What was incredible? Like, God didn't save him. He didn't heal him. He says, no, but he gave him to his last breath to come back to him.
Yeah. That's exactly what I took away from it.
He blew me away.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I took away from it. Amazing. I love that story. I loved it when you shared it the first time, and I can never hear it enough. So kudos to you for making a difference in Rick's life, man. It didn't turn out the way you wanted it to, but I guarantee you gave him more life than he probably had left in him.
That's what Sartorius said at the end. He goes, man, that guy made it by the skin of his teeth. He's going to be the first one up there when you get there, thanking you.
Yep. Yeah.
I hope so. But like I was telling you, Kevin, it was God working on me too, because it was in the moment when he passed, and I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want to help anybody anymore. I'm going to keep my distance. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to pray. I'm going to do what I need to do, but I'm not going to help people anymore. This disciple making is not for me. And then God said, who are you doing it for then? Were you doing it for me, or were you doing it for Joe? And I said, wow, you got me. I was doing it for me. All right.
Well,
But it took a lot out. It took a lot out of me.
that kind of leads me into something that I wanted to ask you about announcing. And you have a philosophy in announcing that you're announcing for the fighters. You're not announcing for yourself. And there's one specific aspect when you announce for a fighter that you highlight more than another, where they're fighting from.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yes,
You
I
say
had to
that's more
process
important
that.
than anything.
I was I was so drawn into you. I had to process for a minute. I know where you're going with this. Yes, no. That I mean, the two most important things are the name pronunciation, but I think the most important thing is the city they're from. So I hold that in high regard as well. And sometimes we get some wacky ones, some that I can't even repeat because I can't remember them. But there's been times where I'll walk up to them and I'll say, "You thanks, good you thanks, Poland." How do you say? And they'll say, "Oh, you did it perfect. My people in Poland love you." I said, "Oh, thank you.
There,
I'm happy." Yeah, those are those little victories we get.
of course. And
Yeah,
what
but
what is the most important trait for a successful announcer? Is
um,
it good voice? Is it
I don't know. I mean, it depends on who you ask, I guess.
yeah?
Uh, for me personally, I want to be I want to be liked. I think that that's part of my makeup is feeling liked, and I think that is a part of my of why I became so why I was such a wild child, why I was the do everything guy, the fun guy, the funny guy, the make people laugh guy, because I wanted people to like me. I didn't have the best childhood. I didn't have a good father. I had a very abusive upbringing. Um, Probably should have been killed, but my mom escaped. A terrorizer, and I think for me to defend that hurt, I created a new character.
Okay.
So the hurt part of me is rarely seen. My wife's seen it, and some people have, but the fun guy, the funny guy, that's who I portray. So I like to be liked because I just don't. I never want anybody to feel that fear. I never want anybody to feel afraid of who they truly are. And maybe that for me is a bad way to handle it, which is why I think counseling is good. It's good to process these things and get them out. I mean, I look back at my life and I'm like, man, where could I go back to and change one thing that would make the rest of my life good? And I can't even go back far enough. I can't think of a time where my life when I was a kid was like, oh, this is so good. I just want to start here, you know,
Yeah.
other than when it was just me and my mom and when my father was away and it was just me and my mom. I remember one night and I used to get to sleep in her bed when he was gone. And what were we doing? We were like maybe been 3 or 4 years old. And I remember this, and we're doing like zebras, and what does a zebra sound like? And I was, just giraffe and naming animals. We just used to have neat little conversations. My mom's such a sweet woman, and man, I feel awful for her that she had to go through that. But God is faithful. He removed that enemy. He removed that thorn and replaced him with my dad, who was my stepdad, and that's the man who showed me love. I had my grandpa too. I had three influences that were full of love and teaching, and I had one who just taught me hate. And
Mm.
hate was so strong in my life that that's all I knew how to do, but I also knew how to love. So I could do both. I
Yeah.
could hate and love and maybe trick people into thinking, I was okay or I was good for them, relationships.
Uh-huh. Well,
But
that's
I
that.
wasn't.
Like you say, that's the choice that God puts in front of us. That
Mhm.
there's a path that we can follow, or there's another path we can follow, and one's
Yeah.
wider than the other. And it takes courage to take that short path, that narrow path.
Yeah.
It takes courage to do that. But the one thing that I think separates you from most of the other and you said it without saying it in your answer. I think the most important trait an announcer can have is realism. And I think you and Jimmy Lennon Jr. are the two most real announcers out there, you know? And you don't have to sell it. You don't have to scream it. It just exudes, man, you know? And I think that's a really important trait to have.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a huge compliment. I appreciate that.
Well,
yeah, I think we question ourselves all the time.
Well, sure we do.
The mirror is a great enemy.
The mirror's a great enemy,
Yeah.
and so is the internet. And I want to go back to something we started the conversation with, and you said a couple of days ago or a couple of weeks ago, you had an interview, and you were talking about how nervous you were in the octagon. You followed that up in this interview by saying, because people are always going to compare me to Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
You can't stop that. You can't stop the comparisons, right? Yeah. I mean, but nobody can.
They're right, though. I'm not Bruce.
Nor do we want you to be.
Why did I dump social media? I don't need to hear that. I know who I'm not.
Yeah.
But I know who I am.
Yeah. And that's more important. That's more important. So how did you find your voice? How did you find your style?
I was blessed to be growing up in a time where Michael Buffer and Jimmy Lennon Jr. were the two guys. Mm-hmm. They were the two main guys in boxing. And I loved Jimmy's class pronunciations and style, and I loved Michael's depth and range. And I think I just wanted to hybrid myself after the two of them. The patterns can be similar at times, I think, and sometimes I'm hearing myself. I'm like, oh, stop! I sound a little bit too too much like Michael right now. Stop it. Or I get a little high in my pitch and a little bit more like Jimmy. I'm like, I just try to stay in that middle ground. I think I found it. I mean, after, oh gosh, what's it been now? 28 years now, 29 years.
That's nice.
Announcing professional sports, 25 in combat sports. So I think I've got my voice now.
Is your ring announcing voice the same as your baseball announcing voice? Or is the style different?
Different style. Yeah, definitely a different style.
How so?
Yeah. Baseball, there's no real draw out of names.
Uh-huh.
Now batting third baseman, I wouldn't be going like Kevin Klein. Yeah.
What is the highest praise and who can it come from that a ring announcer could get?
Gosh, I don't know.
Is it the fighter saying, is it the fighter saying, man, you pumped me up? Or is it the promoter saying, dude, that was great. You got the crowd going. All the above?
Yeah, I would say all the above. I would say any praise praise is the highest. But if you're seeking it, oh my gosh.
No, you don't do it for that.
Yeah, if you're looking for somebody to say, hey, good job, that was really fantastic, you're missing the whole opportunity. You're missing what you're doing, and you're not doing it for the right reasons.
So here's something that stunned me when I went and saw you at Invicta. Okay, it was a 5-fight card, and it's televised, and you get in there, and it was just like the first fight was the 6th fight of the night. You're just like, you got in there, you announced it. There was no real big fanfare. You saved that for the main event, but it was just like, you're not performing. You're just doing a service.
Yeah.
I thought it was amazing. It really was. It really was. Because I watch a lot of combat sports, and I watch for the announcers, and there are some that they want to be the show.
Yeah.
And it aggravates me, Joe. It really does. And I know some of these people, and I don't know. Is that the promoter wanting them to do that, or is it just their nature?
Yeah, I don't know. I would think it might be the promomer asking them to be a little bit more crazy or wild, or roll on the cage mat and scream names. I don't know.
Does an announcer need to have a catchphrase these days?
I don't think so. If you're fortunate enough to think of a good one, who's ever going to beat Michaels? Nobody. Nobody's going to top that.
No.
That is the most iconic the most. It's just there's nothing better. There's
Yeah.
truly nothing better.
Well, I mean, you have somewhat of a catchphrase. Are you ready? Make some noise. Bruce has
Mhm.
it's time. Jimmy, when he was doing boxing on Showtime, would say it's showtime. Everything else to me seems contrived, you know?
Yeah,
And if it's going to be contrived, it's not real.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
That's why for a long time I didn't want to do one,
yeah.
and I didn't even think I needed to do one. But when one came to mind, I said, "Oh, I might just try this." And I do. I will sometimes say something that I didn't even think I was going to say while I'm doing, a main event. Because I think the more we try to put into things, when we try to pack in a whole bunch into a little tiny little, wallet, we can start to get all jacked up.
Yeah.
It's like just keep it simple. Keep it simple. You get in, do your gig, and get out. Don't be all wordy and this and that. And that's why I just say if I say wins and I say victories, I say losses and I say defeats. Those are the four. I
Yep.
say official weight or I say weighing in officially. Those are the two. But when you try to get cute with stuff, it can get messy. So I just try to keep it clean.
Okay. So how do you do
Yeah.
this? You have a fighter who's fought 18 times and they have 2 wins and 16 losses. How do you make that? How do you deal with that? That's a hard sell.
Nah, that's an easy sell.
Really? How?
Those are easy. This veteran steps into the octagon for the 19th time as a professional. Boom.
Oh, so you don't have to say the wins and losses. You just go, okay. Because you
I
don't want to
won't do
embarrass
that.
that fighter.
No, absolutely. And I never will. I would
Yeah.
never do that.
Yeah.
And I've seen just exactly that. Not 2-16, but I've seen, you know, pretty bad record 3-9. Stuff like that happens all the time. These
Yeah.
body bag fights are unfortunate. And you see it a lot in boxing because kids, they're trying to build kids' records up.
Sure.
And you got the guy working the 9 to 5, maybe working 2 jobs a week to support his family, taking a $500 pay to go get beat up for, probably 90 seconds.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
He's not got anything invested in him. He's not the stable guy.
Another guy who's got a great catchphrase, Lupe Contreras, who's a good friend of mine from Houston, Kianos Mas Macho.
Mm-hmm.
2 questions off of that statement right there. Number one, you are incredibly bilingual. I'm going to play the Chito Vera intro right here.
Here's the UFC's 5th-ranked bantamweight contender of the world, presentando el orgullo de John de Manabi, Ecuador, Marlon Chito Vera!
Dude, I'm not even Hispanic, and I wanted to go fight when you did that. So how beneficial is it to be bilingual?
I probably wouldn't get any jobs if I wasn't. No, my first audition with Golden Boy was in 2002, and it was for HBO Latino. They of course used Lupe, but I got to sit in front of Golden Boy, and they got to see me. And a couple years later, I was able to do more work with him, which is when we began our relationship. And I practiced hard. I mean, I wanted to make sure my Spanish was good. Ralph Gonzalez was a writer, a boxing writer back in the day. Not sure what he's doing anymore. I haven't talked to him, but he actually was there for that. And I got some help from Benny Ricardo, who was doing play-by-play in Spanish and helping me script things out. So they gave us some copy and we had to create our own little spiel, what we were going to say. And then I think we had maybe a 90-second interview, boom, go. And I was flawless. I was so excited too, because I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to leave an impression. And then I didn't get called for the gig, but that's just how my life has always gone though. I wasn't the first call. I wasn't the first call for Golden Boy. I wasn't the first call for WEC. WEC led me to UFC. I wasn't first pick, but I always know. I always know when I'm not the first guy, it's totally fine. That's kind of like my own motto is like, I am second. I'm not first in my life. God's first in my life. I'm second.
Yeah.
So I'll just roll with that. If I'm not your number, that's fine. I'll be happy being everybody's number two. I'm not UFC's number one. I'm UFC's number two.
I'm still
That's
on the podium, man.
I invest in silver, bro.
The other thing about Lupe was he told me when he was first starting out, he was doing these cards in Mexico. And if the fans didn't agree with the decision, they'd take it out on him by throwing bottles and stuff at him. What's the most harrowing episode you've ever had?
Oh yeah, Puerto Rico, man. I had a fight over there with Coto Promotions, and exactly like that, man. These two, one kid was from Villalba, and the other one was from maybe I don't remember what town, but the wrong kid won. And next thing you know, and it was funny. Eric Gomez from Golden Boy, we're sitting back there. It was a co-pro with Golden Boy and Coto, and we're sitting just a little bit back, probably like five rows back, and this guy in front of us, he's got a cast on his arm, and he's talking to this guy, and he pops off. So he stands up and boom, hits him with his cast. And then his buddy stands up and hits the guy with the cast. And it just kept going like this and this and this. And then next thing you know, Eric and I were like, boom, we jump to the back to get out of the way. And cops start funneling these guys right out the door. And what was wild about it is the police station was right across the street. Like literally across, they're just funneling right across the street. So then the wrong kid wins the fight. I go up to announce, and who was left? I mean, a chair comes flying in, a big gallon of Gatorade bottle comes flying in, and I was like, "Oh Lord, this is awesome!" It was not cool at all. It was like I should just get under here, get under the table and do it. But it wasn't so bad for me. I know Al Bernstein took a bottle to the head in Puerto Rico. I mean, they're passionate down there, man.
Yeah, they are
passionate in Mexico. Any of these most of them, you don't see it a lot in the U.S.
No,
but the passion for sport is unreal.
Well,
compared to how we view things.
Well, especially when you're talking about foreign fighters, and one of the things that you said earlier, that the place they're representing is more important than their name. Those fans they're territorial. That's my guy. He's representing me. We don't have that passion.
No. We hardly even have that passion for humanity, for our own country.
Very true.
It's hard to find. It's hard to find.
What was it like going to Abu Dhabi?
Which time? So I was there 3 times.
Yeah.
The first time was, I think I was there 19 days for Fight Island, and it was incredible.
Really?
You could golf. We had jet skis. We had the racetrack where we could go drifting. We were passengers, drifting. Formula One. You're just a passenger in that. And then they busted out the 10 speeds. We could ride those in the morning. While the track was empty, so you could do laps. We had a nice little safe zone, and then the food was unbelievably good. It was off the charts. And I'm like, we're getting paid to sit here and eat the greatest food on the planet. We're the safest people in the world right now because nobody can come in and penetrate this bubble. And we have all these amenities right before us. It's like there was no lack. We were not lacking in any way. And I hung out with my 2 buddies, Matthew Valenzuela and Albert Lineses. Albert's the DJ for UFC. And the 3 of us were like the 3 amigos. We just ate all our meals together and kept each other, kept our spirits up.
When you're traveling for a promotion, you pay nothing out of pocket.
No.
Mm-mm. That's awesome. So they're getting your travel and everything's covered, and you're getting paid on top of it.
Yes.
Yeah, buddy. You better be praying every night. That's a gig, man.
Well, yeah. But I bring my wife. I bring my wife too. So
yeah,
I pay for her flights or bring my son. I always like to have some accountability with me. If it's my son, my daughter, or my wife, I like to roll with them.
Absolutely. I got to share a personal story with you because I don't think we ever talked about this. We might have. I'm not sure. But so a buddy of mine is a publicist in Vegas. His name's Bruce Marin. And Bruce got talking to Scott Kent about lion fights when he wanted to take that really, really big. And Bruce mentioned that I like to ring announce. And so I'd had a couple of email conversations with Scott and came down to, we're going to go in a different direction. Guess who that direction was? I'm staring at him right now. And I'm like,
get out of here.
No, it was you, man. And I'm like, man, I can't compete with that. No kidding. Now I know why they went in that different direction.
That's not right.
Oh, dude, it was no big deal, man. But I was like, yeah, okay, I can understand why they went in a different direction.
That happened to me last year too, and I felt bad. And I didn't know. I had a buddy who was trying to do a show for DAZN, and these guys called me to do the show. I said, yeah, and then we're actually at dinner. And he goes, yeah, I think I have an opportunity to do this show in Nashville for DAZN. And I said the promotion. He goes, yeah. I said, oh, I'll buy dinner tonight, bro. I got you.
Oh, and by the way, I didn't say that story to make you feel anything but pride. Dude, that's how good you are, that people want you.
Oh, no. Well, I look at them as flavors. Everybody's got a favorite flavor.
Of course. Of course.
Um,
Are there gigs you turn down? Are you able to?
You mean offered? Like
yeah, if somebody offers
me a
and
show, or if it was an outside show, like a different show.
Yeah, if it was a different show.
Yeah, I've done that. I've actually walked into a show and walked out of it.
Really?
Yes, this is early in my career, and I'll tell you why.
I would love to know why.
2004, and I'm living in Seal Beach, which is next to Long Beach in California.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a show in San Pedro, which is next to Long Beach on the other side. So I'm like, shoot, that's only 20 minutes away. Well, I meet this promoter, and he goes, hey, I have this show. It's a private show, and it's at my gym, and it's this day, and it's a bunch of female boxers. I said, oh, okay, cool. I'm in. How much you pay? He's like, I'll give you $500. I was like, shoot, yeah, I'm in. This is 20 something years ago. 20 years ago, right? So I get down there and I start getting my cards ready. I got my tux on. I brought my buddy, and he came down from my hometown, and he's with me, and all these girls are everywhere. I'm like, these don't look like girl fighters. And I go to the promoter guy. I said, these aren't girl boxers. He goes, no, they're porn stars. And I'm like, porn stars? He goes, yeah, well, they're B porn stars. They're not like A-list porn stars. They're B. And I said, what is this, bro? And at the time I had an agent. So I'm like, I'm just going to roll with this for a second and see how this goes. So I go and I get all the fight notes, see who's fighting who. And I say, is this going on TV? And then there's cameras everywhere. They go, no, it's going straight to DVD. So I'm like, these porn stars are going to be fighting, possibly doing other stuff. And I'm going to be announcing this. This is going to be my face on here. And it's going DVD distribution. So that's forever. So I call my agent. I go, Paul, this is a situation. He goes, get the F out of there right now. And I'm like, okay. So I go to the promoter. I said, look, man, I got to go. I'm sorry, but I can't do this. And so at least I had some type of moral compass or guidance.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, how much are you making? This is the producer now. And he says, well, how much you make? I said, $500. He goes, well, shoot, you're making more than everybody here. I said, well, that's still not enough, man. This is going to be my livelihood. It wasn't yet, but this is where I'm practicing to make my mark in this sport. And I don't want this on my resume. So you asked, had I walked out or turned down a show? Well, I did.
And a great reason to turn that show down. Yeah.
Gladly. Yeah.
Take us through a typical day on a UFC card for you.
Oh man, it's embarrassingly chill.
Really?
It is the least amount of stress I've ever had, other than watching my wife give birth to our kids. No, and I'm half joking, but when my mind is right, as it is now, and there's a UFC card, it's truly the easiest day of any job I've ever done. I do my cards on Thursday, write them all out, scan them, send them to UFC. They look over them. If there's any corrections I need to make, they tell me. On Friday after the weigh-in, I put my weights in, get my refs and judges. My cards are done. I don't do weigh-ins. I just show up Saturday. We do a 1 o'clock show. I'm there at 11:45. Doors are open at 12. First fight's at 1. And that's it. I just do the show. It's a 6-hour commitment. And by 7 o'clock, I'm usually in my car, and my wife and I are going out to dinner. It is that easy. And we get it. So back in the day when I started announcing,
Uh-huh.
you get the bout sheet. So the only thing I really know about these kids is maybe their record, their weight, where they're from, and their name, right?
Right.
So I would go talk to them all to get what they want. Well, I live in LA, but I'm from Guadalajara, Jalisco, and blah, blah, blah. And you know what? I'm actually not 5-6. I'm actually 7-5.
Uh-huh.
They start changing records for you. And I'm like, yeah, sure, buddy. Um, but you would have to do the legwork. You have to go do all your notes. Well,
Right.
now we get this book and it has everybody's, all their information from fight one to fight today, where they're from, how they feel about the day, where they're fighting out of, where they were raised, just everything. It's all already in there. So my notes are just boom, boom, boom. And all I do for MMA is I do fight style, their height, their weight, their record, where they're fighting out of, and their name. And of course, the nickname goes with that.
Uh-huh.
With boxing, it's trunk colors, um, trunks, weight, record, from, and name. So those 5 things.
Do you miss those days of having to go track down that information yourself?
100% not. No way.
100% no.
Because you're running around like, where's Johnny Cañas? He's in the other corner, or he's in the toilet. Yeah, I don't miss that. I
Yeah.
don't miss that.
Do you become friends with the
No.
fighters?
There's some.
Yeah.
There's some. It's not frowned upon,
Okay.
and I really enjoy a lot of our MMA guys, UFC fighters, guys just trying to make it. There's a great deal of respect that I have for them, and I hope to just at least give them that feeling of value when I get to say their name. That when that opportunity comes, and outside of there, we might cross paths and say hello. But I know a lot of coaches, like my WEC days, because we were so all together all the time.
Uh-huh.
We were a small promotion, and but just some high level MMA, high level fighters. Uriah Faber, Eddie Wineland, Danny Castillo, all these guys coming through there. Jens Pulver, who come over from UFC to fight Faber at 45 because UFC didn't have a 45 at that time. It
No.
was a 55, and that was it. Former UFC world champ. I mean, at 55. And becoming friends, buddies with these guys. And those relationships will last for forever.
Sure.
Of course, but it's like you have your work friends, you have your you and I acquaintance friends,
Uh-huh.
and then I have my life friends. So
Yeah.
I would consider them my work friends, that I do care about. I have a heart for them, but my life friends, those are the ones that they get my time all the time. But
Sure.
my family, family is my first ministry, and that's where I try to keep my mind set my my heart on those things at home, and speaking life into my kids, and getting lessons from my kids. Even my son gave me a character lesson the other day, and he didn't even realize it. He thought he was going to get his butt whipped, but he taught me so much in that moment at 13 years of age when
Can you share?
he's playing. Well, yeah, he's playing football in the house, and the ball hits the floor, bounces up, and shatters the window. $430.
Yeah.
And I was at work. I was at UFC. And my wife goes, I got to tell you something Drew did. And he already told me what happened. And he's afraid you're going to be upset with him. But I want to let you know that he's taking ownership of it. I said, what? Okay, what happened? She goes, promise me you won't get mad. I said, okay, I won't get mad. What happened? And I'm thinking, he broke my TV. He broke the TV, didn't he? He broke the TV. And she goes, he broke the window. I go, oh, okay. Okay, well, what happened? Tell me what happened. So anyway, he breaks the window. Mom's here, so he goes up and he's already crying. He goes, Mom, I broke the glass. I was playing football. I know I shouldn't have been playing in that house. He has his wallet, $76 in his wallet that he had left over from his Christmas. He goes, here's all my money that I have. And he says, and I'll do chores until this is all paid off. I says, whatever you need me to do, I'm going to take care of it. And so she tells me this story. And I'm thinking, how in the world can I get mad at that?
Yeah.
So I come home and he's upstairs. I go in his room and he looks at me and he's a bit like, how's this going to go? And I said, son, I said, man, it sucks that happened. He goes, yeah. I said, but you understand what just happened? Like you showed me something amazing. He goes, well, what? I said, you took ownership of what you did. You held yourself accountable and you stepped up and you were a man. Like you showed me stuff that I couldn't even do, at your age, let alone at some time in my adult age would even do. I break something, I might just be like, later,
Right.
And this kid took full responsibility, and it's a window I never opened. I probably never would have seen it, but he knew. He's like, he just had that forethought, that he has that integrous about him.
Uh-huh.
A character that I would love to say he got from me, but I know he got from his mom.
Wow.
And I loved it. And I said, I'm proud of you. I said, I'm upset. Yeah, it's gonna be a bummer because we got to pay for that. But I am so proud of you and what you have shown me and taught me today, that there's no way I could ever be mad at you. I said, you keep being the man you are. Keep growing that way and don't hide. And he hugs me and he goes, thank you, Daddy. I'm so sorry. I said, no, we're good. We're good. And it was huge for me, that moment, to be able to experience that with him.
Well, it's they say the kids are a reflection of the parents. So congratulations to you and your wife, man.
Yeah, thank you. I hope we don't have any more stories like that to share, but
yeah, right.
It was pretty awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
those are expensive ones.
You'll be on the phone with Dana more often saying, hey, man, I need another card real
fast.
Yeah,
I need another card.
Well, brother, man, I have, this has been a very awesome conversation, and it always is when you and I get together, but this was very, very meaningful to me.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I enjoyed talking to you as well. Sorry we haven't been able to connect more now that Invictus kind of spread its wings a little more and ventured off out of Missouri and Kansas.
Yeah,
but
now that I know you're in Vegas, dude, are you just fearing next weekend?
No, absolutely not. No, I'm hosting at my house, so it'll be chill. I live in Henderson, which is way away from the madness.
Yeah, so. But I remember being at the MGM Grand for Tyson Holyfield, the ear biting, and that town was absolutely berserk. I can't imagine what it's going to be like for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'll watch the news. I'll see what's going down. Yeah. We don't venture out that way, man.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. Well, brother, thank you so much for the enlightenment. Thanks for your time, and seriously, man, I hope we get to hang out again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kevin. And you take care, and God bless you, man. Thank you.
God bless you too, Joe. Thanks, buddy. Bye-bye. My thanks to Joe Martinez for his friendship, mentorship, and this amazing conversation. And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast and you'd like to help support, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and leave a rating and review. If you do, I'm grateful. Thank you for taking the time. To stay connected with the Fuzzy Mike, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. For video, as I mentioned, please subscribe to the Fuzzy Mike YouTube channel. The Fuzzy Mike is hosted and produced by Kevin Klein. Production elements by Zach Sheesh at the Radio Farm. Social media director is Trish Klein. I'll be back next Tuesday with a new episode of the Fuzzy Mike, and I'm pretty sure my guest is going to be my 25-year-long radio partner, Tim Tuttle. You'll learn a lot about radio, and probably more than you want to know about me. Definitely more than I probably want to share. Anyway, see you next Tuesday, and thank you for listening.
That's it for the Fuzzy Mike. Thank you. The Fuzzy Mike with Kevin Klein.
Fuzzy Mike.